In a small village surrounded by mountains, there lived an elderly monk named Daiki. From a young age, he had walked the path of meditation and deep reflection. Many admired him for his serenity, but few knew the journey that had led him to find inner peace. One afternoon, a young apprentice named Taro approached the monastery in search of answers. He had heard stories about the peace that radiated from Daiki and wished to learn how to attain it. The monk welcomed him with a calm smile and said, "Inner peace is not found by searching outside of yourself. It is a journey into the deep silence that resides in your heart." Taro, confused, asked, "But how can I find this silence, Master? My mind is full of thoughts and worries." Daiki pointed to the nearby river, which flowed serenely and steadily, without hurry or anxiety. The mind is like this river. Thoughts are the waters that flow, but if you observe carefully, you will see that the river always returns to its state of calm, regardless of what flows through it. The young man watched the river, but didn't fully understand. "And how can I calm my mind, Master?" Daiki asked him to sit by the river and close his eyes. Listen to the sound of the water. If you can hear its rhythm without clinging to it, you will see how peace begins to emerge within you. Taro sat down, closed his eyes, and for a moment, let himself be carried by the sound of the water. But soon, his thoughts began to interrupt the serenity. "I can't stop thinking," he murmured. The monk smiled gently and, with a calm voice, said, "The mind cannot be forced to calm down, but you can learn to let it be. Peace is not in the absence of thoughts, but in the acceptance of them as they are." Taro remained silent, watching the river, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a slight sigh of peace. Although his mind was still active, something inside him began to calm. The monk's teaching had started to touch his heart, even though he didn't fully understand everything yet. Peace, he thought, must be found in the flow of life itself. The days passed, and Taro stayed by the river every afternoon, meditating in silence. Each time his thoughts distracted him, he tried to follow Daiki's advice. Not to resist, but to accept. At first, the struggle was constant. His thoughts wouldn't stop, but something inside him was beginning to change. One afternoon, while meditating, Daiki approached and sat beside him. Without saying a word, they both watched the river. The trees around them swayed gently in the wind, and the sky, tinged with orange, announced the sunset. After a long while, Daiki broke the silence. "The water flows without clinging to anything, without trying to stop in time. It is free not because there is no movement, but because it accepts the movement as it is." Taro, who had been struggling to calm his mind, humbly asked, "How can I be like the water, Master?" The monk looked at him with serene eyes and replied, "Inner peace is not a place to arrive at, but a state of being. You don't need to fight against the current of your thoughts. You only need to stop resisting. When you let go of what you can't control, you find calm in what you can." Taro reflected on his master's words. He began to understand that peace wasn't about stopping his thoughts, but about allowing them to flow without identifying with them. That night, as he prepared to sleep, Taro lay in his bed and thought about all he had learned. For a moment, his mind was silent, as if the whole world had stopped moving. He felt a deep peace, as if the sound of the river was inside him. It was a beginning, a small step toward the peace he had been searching for all his life. But in that moment, Taro knew he was closer than ever to finding it. As the days passed, Taro continued his practice, becoming increasingly aware of the peace that was beginning to blossom in his heart. However, it wasn't always easy. Sometimes, his mind would fill with restlessness, and the search for tranquility seemed like an impossible task. But he no longer despaired. He remembered Daiki's words, Don't fight the river, just let it carry you. One morning, while walking through the monastery, Taro saw a small bird perched on a branch, gazing at the horizon. At first, he thought it was just an ordinary bird, but something about the scene stopped him. The bird didn't seem to be in a hurry or uneasy. It was simply there, in silence, with its eyes fixed on the sky. Taro approached carefully and, not wanting to disturb it, sat beside it. He watched the bird for a long while. He couldn't stop thinking about the stillness of that small creature. How did it manage to be so calm? Did it not fear what was to come? Then he remembered Daiki's words. The present is all you have. The past is gone, and the future has not yet come. Don't worry about what you cannot control. Just live here now. The young apprentice, just like the bird, realized that he didn't need to worry about what he couldn't control. The future and the past only existed in his mind, but peace could only be found in the here and now. That afternoon, Taro returned to the river, and for the first time in a long time, he sat by the shore without expecting anything. He was simply there, feeling the breeze on his face and the constant murmur of the water. He wasn't trying to calm his mind or reach a state of serenity. He was just allowing himself to be. Little by little, Taro understood that inner peace wasn't a destination to reach, but an experience that was lived in each moment of acceptance. Like the flowing water, peace was always present. It just waited to be recognized. As night fell, Taro smiled, feeling a slight satisfaction in his heart. Peace wasn't something he had to seek outside of himself. It was within him. It had always been there. It was just a matter of letting go and allowing everything to flow. That same night, Taro went to meet Daiki. The monk was sitting in front of a small campfire, watching the flames dance in the darkness. Taro, with a clearer mind and a lighter heart, sat beside him in silence. The crackling of the fire was the only sound that broke the stillness of the night. After a few minutes, Daiki spoke softly. The fire, like the water, is not in a hurry. It consumes itself at its own pace, and its heat does not depend on how fast it burns. Peace is like this, Taro. It doesn't come hurriedly. It only manifests when you stop trying to rush it. Taro nodded, understanding what his master wanted to teach him. He had been seeking peace as if it were something he needed to reach quickly, something he could possess and display. But now he understood that peace wasn't an achievement, but a continuous practice of being present in each moment. Master, how can I maintain this peace in my daily life? Taro asked sincerely. Daiki looked at the flames for a moment, as if meditating on his response, and then said, You cannot force peace, Taro. You cannot possess it either. Peace only comes when you stop fighting against what happens to you. Life is like a garden that needs time to grow. Don't worry about when it will bloom. Just take care of the soil and the seeds. Peace will sprout in its own time. Taro reflected on the monk's words. For years, he had wanted peace, as if it were something he could control or forge at will. But now he understood that peace couldn't be rushed or forced. It was a flower that would bloom in its own time, as long as he was willing to nurture it with patience and acceptance. That night, Taro retired to his room with a sense of serenity he had never experienced before. He no longer felt the rush to find peace. He no longer felt the need to fight against his thoughts or emotions. He could only trust that, like the monastery's garden, peace would grow on its own if he continued to care for it with attention and love. With that trust, he settled into his bed, closed his eyes, and let himself be carried by the whisper of the wind and the distant murmur of the river. The world continued, but within him, everything was at peace. With time, Taro became a more serene and wise young man. His meditation practices by the river and his conversations with Daiki helped him understand that inner peace was not something that could be maintained rigidly or forcibly, but rather it was a natural flow, something to be allowed in each moment of life. One day, while meditating at dawn, Taro realized something profound. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, bathing everything in its golden light, and in that moment, there was nothing to worry about. There was no need to go anywhere or do anything in particular. He was completely present, embracing the stillness of the moment. The wind gently caressed his face, the leaves rustled softly, and the birds sang effortlessly. Everything seemed to be in harmony. In that moment, Taro understood that inner peace was not just about the quiet moments, but about accepting life as it came, with its ups and downs, its moments of calm and its storms. Daiki appeared in the clearing, walking slowly toward him. Seeing Taro's peaceful expression, the monk sat beside him without saying a word, simply sharing that moment of harmony. Finally, Taro spoke, his voice soft and confident. "I understand, Master. Peace is not something to be sought, nor something to be achieved. Peace is the way we relate to what is. I no longer seek it outside, nor in the future. I only find it in the now, in this moment." Daiki nodded, his face reflecting a peace that only years of wisdom can provide. "Yes, Taro. Peace has always been here inside you. You just needed to learn to silence the voices that kept you away from it." The young man looked at the horizon, feeling for the first time a deep gratitude for every small moment of his life. The days passed, but his peace did not depend on them. It was like the river, flowing serenely regardless of the seasons, knowing that everything would come in its own time. As the evening fell, Taro returned to the monastery, his steps light, his mind calm, and his heart at peace. He no longer hurried. He no longer fought. He just lived, present and in tune with the natural flow of life. That night, as he lay down to sleep, Taro closed his eyes with a smile. The peace he had sought for so long was not something he could lose, because now it was a part of him, always available, like the air he breathed. Everything was perfect just as it was. The weeks passed with the same calm as the river flowing near the monastery. Taro dedicated himself to his daily tasks with a peace that seemed to emanate from his being. There was no longer a yearning to attain something more. The small moments of life, like sweeping the courtyard or preparing the food, had become a silent dance, full of grace and presence. One day, while walking through the nearby forest, Taro stopped when he saw a solitary flower growing among the stones. Despite the difficulties of its surroundings, the flower stood tall, its petals open to the sun. Taro crouched down, observing it in silence. Something in its beauty spoke directly to his heart. Daiki appeared at that moment, as if he had been watching from a distance. He approached Taro and, without saying a word, also looked at the flower. The monk smiled faintly. "This flower," said Daiki, "is like inner peace. It doesn't grow in perfect soil, nor in an ideal environment. It grows amidst difficulties without complaining. Peace doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on how we respond to them. The flower remains beautiful, no matter the stones surrounding it." Taro understood immediately. For a long time, he had believed that inner peace was only possible when everything in his life was in order. But now he saw that peace could bloom amidst difficulties and challenges, like the flower growing among the stones. "So peace doesn't depend on what surrounds me," murmured Taro, "but on how I choose to be with what is." "Exactly," replied Daiki, his voice soft but full of depth. "The external world is like a changing landscape. Sometimes it's calm, other times turbulent. Peace is not about trying to control those changes, but about being like the flower, which accepts what comes without losing its essence. That lesson remained etched in Taro's heart. He no longer expected life to always be easy or peaceful. He understood that inner peace was not about escaping difficulties, but about accepting that they too were part of the process. Like the flower, peace could bloom even in the midst of adversity. As he returned to the monastery that afternoon, Taro felt a renewed sense of gratitude. No matter what life brought him, he could find peace in the present moment, in his response to what was happening around him. There was nothing left to fear, because peace was with him always. That night, as he prepared to sleep, Taro smiled thinking about the flower. He knew that, like it, he too could bloom where he was, no matter the challenges life placed before him. As the months passed, Taro became a young man of great wisdom, known not only for his tranquility but for the deep understanding of life that emanated from him. People who visited the monastery often sought his advice, drawn by the calm that radiated from him. One day, a traveler arrived at the monastery. He was exhausted, his face reflected anxiety, and his mind seemed unable to find rest. He approached Taro and, with an urgent voice, said, "I've heard of your peace. I've traveled far, seeking some answer, but my thoughts torment me constantly. How do you manage to find tranquility? How can I attain the peace that you have?" Taro looked at him with compassion, understanding his suffering. "Peace is not something that can be found in the future or in a distant place," he replied softly. "Peace is already within you, but often we don't see it because we are too busy looking outside of ourselves for something that can only arise from within." The traveler frowned, not fully understanding. "Then how do I begin to find it?" Taro, with a calm smile, pointed to the nearby river. "Look at that river. The water flows without rushing, without worrying about what will come. The river doesn't stop to think about the future or what happened before. It simply flows. Peace is like the river, traveling through each moment without clinging to it or fearing what is to come." The traveler watched the river, but his anxiety didn't disappear. "My thoughts suffocate me. My mind won't stop speaking to me, telling me I'm not enough, that I won't achieve what I want. How do I silence that voice?" Taro gave a simple yet profound answer. "The mind is like the wind. We can't control its direction, but we can learn not to be swept away by it. You don't need to silence your thoughts. Just learn not to identify with them. You are not your thoughts. You are the consciousness observing them." The traveler stayed silent, thinking about Taro's words. Finally, he asked, "How can I practice this? How can I learn to observe my thoughts without clinging to them?" Taro looked at him with tenderness and replied, "Every time a thought arises, simply observe it without judgment. Imagine it's a cloud passing through the sky. Don't worry about it or try to stop it. Let it go as if it were just part of the landscape. Don't cling to it, and you will discover that peace is already there, waiting for you to recognize it." The traveler nodded slowly, as if beginning to understand. "So, peace is simply being present, without resisting what is?" "Exactly," said Taro. "Peace is the deep acceptance of the present moment, just as it is. It doesn't need to be sought, only recognized. Life unfolds in every breath, in every thought. You just have to be willing to live it without clinging to the past or fearing the future." That night, the traveler lay under the stars, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a gentle sigh of peace. He knew the road ahead was still long, but something in his heart had begun to change. Maybe, he thought, peace was not a distant destination, but a way of living each day with presence and acceptance. Taro, from his room, looked up at the starry sky. He smiled silently, knowing that inner peace is never found in a distant place, but is available in every moment, just waiting to be recognized. The peace in the monastery seemed to have touched everyone who lived there, and little by little, Taro's teachings spread beyond the walls of the temple. More and more people arrived at the monastery seeking the same comfort that the traveler had found, desiring to understand how to live in peace, regardless of what the world brought them. One afternoon, Daiki invited Taro to walk through the monastery's garden. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting everything in a warm golden glow. They walked in silence, as they often did, enjoying the beauty of the present moment. Finally, Daiki broke the silence with a question. "Taro, what have you learned from all this?" Taro smiled softly, his heart filled with gratitude. "I've learned that peace is not something that can be sought or found in some distant place. Peace is already within us, in every moment. It's just a matter of being present and accepting what is, without clinging to what happened or fearing what will come." The monk nodded with satisfaction. "Exactly. Peace is not something to be attained. It's something to be lived. It's not a goal, but a state of being. And most importantly, Taro, now you understand that peace is not just for you, but for all who cross your path." Taro stopped, looking at the sky tinged with orange and the long shadows of the trees. He felt a deep calm within himself, a peace that didn't depend on his surroundings, but on his full acceptance of the present. "I am grateful, Master," Taro said humbly. "All this time I've sought peace, but now I know that peace doesn't need to be sought. It just needs to be lived." Daiki smiled and placed a hand on Taro's shoulder. "The true purpose of peace, Taro, is to share it. When you find peace within yourself, it radiates to others. That is what transforms the world." With these words, Taro understood that his journey had not only been for him, but for those around him. He had discovered inner peace not just for his own well-being, but to share it and guide others to the same understanding. That night, as he settled into his bed, Taro felt a deep sigh of contentment. He no longer sought peace or waited for it in some uncertain future. Peace had already arrived. It was inside him, present in every breath, in every moment of acceptance. And in the end, that was enough. He closed his eyes, smiling. The echo of his breath was the same as the murmur of the river, the same as the wind whispering through the leaves. Peace finally was his and also of all beings in its natural and eternal flow.